All right, so here we are, day 4. I'm going to do a little test fitting. So I have the intake, the Boomba intake spacer. So reading their information on the website, you do have to remove these 2 studs. It came with the bolts. So as you can see, it is an exact fit. It's weird because on their website it doesn't show it as a Veloster part, it shows it as an Elantra and something else, but I read around and everybody says yeah, it's basically the same. I'm going to leave a link in the description from Boomba. They've got a really nice write-up on the install, which if you're trying to take that intake manifold off and you're not 100% sure how that works, it's a great write-up for that. So one thing I am going to do, because they do mention it quite a bit, is the length of your cables. It's going to be a little bit snugger fit, but I'm going to do away with all these brackets that were mounted to the intake manifold, and then I'm going to try to reroute some of this stuff to give myself just a little bit extra length. So hopefully that will kind of help when I do it. But next I'm gonna get the intake manifold and I'm gonna kind of just set it in here and see what it looks like. So I'll be right back. All right, so I removed all of the brackets and these clips that held the brackets onto the different wiring pieces. Really just needed a small Phillips head screw, and on the back of these, where this little indentation is, you can just push down a little bit and it slides them right off the bracket. So that's one set. Now I've got these other ones right here. These are all the wires that go up by the radiator, and as you can see, they're fixed right there. So I may be taking those out. Like I said, I'm trying to give myself just a little bit more slack in the lines to allow myself to fit everything a little bit more smoothly, because one of the things that everybody I seen that installed this said they had a hard time, but they didn't mention removing any of these brackets. So that's going to be that. I got to remove this last gray one here from this side. So I've given myself quite a bit more slack in most of these cables, so hopefully that makes life a little easier. Like I said, if nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and remove those 2 right there, and that will allow me to hopefully get a little bit more slack, because I can see the slack underneath. Now those are the wires. One of them goes to the vacuum pump, and I'm not sure where the other one goes. But yeah, this one here goes someplace down there, and this one here I believe is going to the vacuum pump. At least that's what it looks like from here. So all right, so let me finish getting this one gray one out, and then I'll grab the intake manifold and see how it sits in there. All right, so these 2 lines, I'm just going to get some plugs to cap them off. They don't need to be plugged. They're not connected to anything. Just, I don't know, clean it up, make it look at least a little nicer. So I'm going to get some plugs to cover that. These 2 lines have to stay. These are connected to vacuum, so you do want those 2. These are coolant lines, you don't need them. All they do is add heat to your intake manifold. So next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and just test fit this in here and see how everything lines up. All right, so that fits in there pretty good. The only concern is that this harness that plugs into all that stuff down there is definitely going to be a little short. So I've already disconnected all of those wires from those brackets, but that other set of brackets that I was showing you a minute ago, those right there, definitely need to come off to give us just a little bit more length so we can connect it up. The main power, it fits perfectly back to where stock locations, so don't have to worry about that. So yeah, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get the head studs out of the block so I can put the new studs in. Then step 2 will be putting the alternator and the belt back on, and then until those silicone caps come in tomorrow, I'm going to work on taking out the old oil cooler and putting in the new oil cooler with the remote cooler and trying to find a home for it somewhere there, maybe. I've got enough space, but I may have to pull the front bumper off to make some brackets or something. So that might be a project. So it's fine. We're making headway a little bit at a time. So back in a bit. Okay, so I did disconnect these two. That's the bracket. I already took the clamp off. This one I'm having a hard time, can't see it. This one I'm having a hard time getting to the clamp. I'm going to push it down and disconnect it. But that gives me plenty enough room now for the wires to reach. So that'll solve that problem. All right. I'm trying to think, is there anything else I need to do before I put this back, start working on it? Not much. Oh, there is one other thing. I'm going to take a file and smooth off the back of this bracket just a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing on the alternator. Hopefully that will make it a little easier to slip back in there, just a little bit. And that way when it tightens up, it'll still grab nice, but it'll make life a little easier, because it was a pain to get out. And I don't want to bang on it to get it back in. So I'm going to just take a flat file it down just a little bit. It should be enough. Maybe even put a little grease on it, or some penetrating oil or something, just to give it a little less friction so it pops back in there. And then we can go out doing that. I cleaned up this pulley. It came out pretty nice. I thought about buying an aftermarket one, but I mean, I don't really see the purpose. It'd be more for show, less for go. All right, so I'll be back in a minute. All right, so as I was looking at the alternator, I realized this back piece is supposed to float. So as you tighten it down, it pulls it in and locks it in place, and then as you push unbolt, it's supposed to slide back. But you can see this has got some rust on it, and it doesn't slide in and out of the thing very well. I mean, it's kind of doesn't want to go in and out at all. So I screwed that in a little bit, gave it a few taps with a hammer on the end, and I'm going to clean this up, and I'm going to lube this up, and hopefully it will do what it's supposed to. So if I ever have to do that again. But I also cleaned up that edge. I just kind of hit it with a file so all the sharp edges are off of where it bit into it, and that should solve that. But yeah, that should float. So if you have a problem getting it out, it's because this stupid thing's stuck. All right, so I'm gonna clean this up, put this alternator back together, and then drop it in the car. All right, so I took this over to my grinder. Still hot, but I took a little bit of the outside off, so now it slides in and out. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on that so that it doesn't do that again. And we're going to call that good. So we're going to slap that in there real quick and call this train a day. No, just kidding. So yeah, I'm going to get that back in and then get the belt on. All right, so alternator bracket is in and tight. Bottom bolt is snugged, but I can still move the alternator. Next thing I got to do is hunt down my brake clean so I can clean the pulleys, and then I will put the belt on, and that's going to end this part. And then we will get back into the oil cooler. And I got parts coming for those other things. So yeah, that's where we're going to be at for right now. And I just got to hunt around for my brake clean. Normally I'd use this type of brake clean. You just put it in a squirt bottle, but I can't find my squirt bottle. So I had to run and check my other car, and I found a can of this. I got about a half a can of that left. So that'll be enough to clean the pulleys. But yeah, I prefer this kind just because this stuff seems to make a mess. It gets everywhere. With the squirt bottle, you can either put it as a stream or you can put it as a mist. So that's just my personal thing. But all right, at least I found some. Now I need to just get a rag real quick so I can wipe everything down and throw the belt on. All right, so the pulleys are all wiped down and drying. I'm going to go ahead and plug a couple of these connectors back in while I'm waiting, and then I'll get the belt and get that on there. I need to tighten that one up. All right, so all of those wires are connected. I just need to tighten up the 10 for the battery terminal, and I'll get the belt out. The belt that I got for this thing is a genuine Hyundai part. I don't think there's anything in here other than that part number. All right, so some people have an issue putting these back on. They get confused, but it's sort of simple. The rib side goes to a rib pulley and smooth side goes to smooth pulleys. If you have a rib on a smooth, then it's wrong. You need to relace it. Usually these cars, not these cars, but most cars have a sticker somewhere on the front that shows you the layout, but Hyundai, I guess, saves money by not putting the sticker there. All right, let me get this belt on real quick. So what I usually do, since there's a high point and a low point, I hang the belt off of one of these and then go underneath and get the rest. So ribbed onto the alternator, it's going to go smooth past the water pump down to the air conditioning pump, and then to the crank pulley, and then smooth to the other one, to the idler pulley. Okay, so your belt's going to look like something, should look like that. So from the alternator down to your water pump, the water pump is going to go to the air conditioner to your crank pulley, and then past the tensioner, and should go on fairly easy. Now all I got to do is go back up on top, adjust the alternator bolt until it's tight or snug, and you want to between an inch, half inch kind of play. I always suggest err on the half inch or side, and then once you start it, if you've got a squeak, you can micro tighten it until the squeak goes away. All right, so I've tightened up the bolt. I've got just a little bit of tension on the belt, so it's not over tight. You don't want to tighten it too much and knock anything out of place or make it squeal the other way. I did tighten down the bottom alternator bolt. Sorry. So next thing we're going to do is go ahead and get these studs out, which I was going to do, but then I ran into a few setbacks with the oil cooler, which we will have a separate video input for that. I am going to go ahead and pull the front end off the car so I can get everything sort of lined up. But yeah, once the intake's back on and the intercooler and everything is redone, I am going to fix this wiring mess I have down here. When I took the airbox and everything out, I just sort of zip tied all the wires to the intercooler piping, but I want to clean that up. So we're going to get that done. So next video will be troubles with the universal oil cooler. So and then there will be a part 2 to finishing this up, or day 5 or whatever day I'm on. So all right, so that ends for today, and then we'll get on the intake and stuff once the parts come in tomorrow. All right, so something else I did while I was remembering to do things is I unclipped both of these from the brackets down here, and now they come up above the fan shroud, so that'll be a little easier to plug back in. This one here gives me a little bit more room, so yeah, So if you are doing an intake spacer, I kind of recommend unhooking all those from the brackets. You give yourself a lot more slack so that you can get everything mounted a little easier. So yeah, so next we're just gonna start working on the intake, getting it set up and ready for when I get those plugs in. I could probably put it in and put the plugs in from the bottom, but since it gives me all this space right now, I'm gonna do it, put the plugs on before I put the intake back in. Look at all that weight savings. 2 brackets, bunch of these little plastic clips. I mean, that's got to be worth, what, a second off my lap times? Fuck, I don't know. That's a joke. Yeah. All right. Enough for the comedy.